Some movies never found their moment, but they never lost their power. These 10 forgotten gems might have slipped past the spotlight, but they deliver atmosphere, emotion, and unforgettable storytelling. If you missed them then, now's the time to rediscover them. Street Smart, 1987, is one of those films that hits harder the less you know going in. But here's what gets you hooked. A struggling journalist, played by Christopher Reeve, fakes a story about a street pimp to keep his career alive. The piece blows up. He's suddenly praised for his authentic voice. Except, the story? It wasn't real. Until it is. Morgan Freeman, playing Fast Black, is a real-life pimp who sees himself in the article and decides to use it. What follows is a dangerous, slow burn where truth, image, and manipulation blur. Reeve's character isn't just in over his head. He's drowning in the consequences of a lie that's too close to reality. And Freeman? He delivers a performance that is terrifying, not in a flashy, over-the-top way. He's calm, measured, and somehow even more menacing because of it. This was the role that earned him his first Oscar nomination, and once you see it, you'll understand why. But the movie never got the attention it deserved. Maybe because it's too uncomfortable. Or maybe because Reeve was Superman, and audiences weren't ready to see him in a story this raw. Either way, Street Smart didn't disappear because it was weak. It vanished because it told the truth too well. The Hired Hand, 1971, doesn't ride in with guns blazing. It walks slowly, like a man who's seen too much. Peter Fonda, fresh off Easy Rider, directed and starred in this revisionist western about a drifter named Harry, who returns home after 7 years to the wife he left behind. She's still there, raising their child, but she doesn't welcome him with open arms. She lets him earn his place back, as a hired hand on his own land. There's no big showdown. No heroic speech. Just silence, regret, and the ache of time lost. The film's pacing is slow, deliberately so. Long dissolves, soft focus, landscapes that feel like memories. It's a western about emotions, not bullets. About what happens after the adventure ends, and what it costs to come home. It was dismissed when it came out. Critics didn't know what to do with a film like this. Too quiet, too sad, too strange. But over time, it's become a cult favorite. For those who want their westerns a little more honest. A little more wounded. Fonda wasn't reinventing the West, he was mourning it. And The Hired Hand lingers, like a final sunset you never saw coming. Not loud, not fast, but it stays with you. Hardcore, 1979, is not what it looks like on the surface. It starts simple enough. George C. Scott plays a conservative Midwestern father, church-going, steady. His daughter goes missing during a church trip to California. But when he finds out she's been pulled into the world of adult films, everything fractures. He goes looking, through porn shops, grimy sets, fake names. Each step pulls him deeper, not just into her world, but into something darker in himself. The deeper he goes, the more he stops searching as a father and starts chasing something he doesn't understand. Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver, brings his signature themes: repression, guilt, violence. But here it's filtered through Calvinist belief, the idea that purity can be corrupted, and maybe it already was. Scott's performance is devastating, not loud, controlled, until it isn't. That famous line, turn it off, comes from a place of horror, yes, but also shame, because he sees his daughter, and he sees the cracks in everything he believed. The film was too bleak for audiences at the time, too raw, too honest about what obsession looks like when it wears a father's face. Hardcore isn't about the adult industry. It's about a man trying to fix what broke without realizing he might have helped break it. Ruby in Paradise, 1993, doesn't shout, it doesn't even raise its voice. But somehow, it stays with you. Ashley Judd plays Ruby, young, restless, and freshly arrived in Panama City Beach, Florida. No money, no safety net. Just a small motel job and the quiet determination to start over. And that's what makes this film different. It's about small steps, not big moments. She writes in her journal, thinks out loud, tries to figure out how to live without anyone telling her how. There's no dramatic romance, no twist, just one woman, learning how to listen to herself. It feels real, that slow grind of everyday choices and the fear of slipping through the cracks. Victor Nunez, who wrote and directed it, builds everything around mood. Humid afternoons, worn-down shops, silence that says more than dialogue. And Judd, this was her first major role. She doesn't perform Ruby, she becomes her. There's a calm defiance in the way she carries herself, like someone who's been hurt, but refuses to let it define her. Ruby in Paradise won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance, but barely made a dent commercially. Too quiet, too subtle. But for those who found it, it felt like a secret, a whisper that said, it's okay to start over. The Rapture, 1991, starts like a spiritual search and ends like something out of a nightmare. Mimi Rogers plays Sharon, trapped in a cycle of meaningless hookups and dead-end work. Then she finds religion, and not in a movie of the week kind of way. This is deep, personal, disorienting. She hears a voice. She believes the end is near. At first, it feels like redemption, a way out, but slowly, things begin to unravel. Michael Tolkien, the writer-director, doesn't frame faith as comfort. He frames it as confrontation. What do you do when the voice of God leads you into the desert? Literally? When belief demands a sacrifice you may not be ready to make? The film starts grounded, naturalistic even. Then somewhere along the way, it slips into full-blown apocalyptic horror, without changing style, without warning. And Mimi Rogers, she delivers something rare. Her performance is vulnerable, terrifying, and unwavering. She's not playing a stereotype. She's showing what it might actually look like to go all in. The Rapture never got its due. Too weird, too theological, too hard to market. But if you've ever wrestled with the idea of divine justice, or the silence that follows prayer, this one hits like a bolt of lightning, quiet, and then suddenly blinding. If you haven't already, subscribe to Vintageverse, where timeless stories, classic style, and vintage gems come back to life. From forgotten films to retro icons, we celebrate the past that still speaks to today. The Apostle, 1997, is a movie built on contradiction. Robert Duvall plays Sonny, a fiery Southern preacher who can quote scripture with conviction and still lose himself to violence. In the first 5 minutes, he does something unforgivable, and then he runs. But not from God, from consequences. What's wild is he never stops preaching. He heads deep into Louisiana, baptizes himself in a muddy river, and starts over as the Apostle EF. He builds a new church from scratch, on borrowed time. And through it all, Duvall never asks you to excuse the man. He asks you to watch him wrestle, with his past, with his faith, with his soul. This is not a redemption arc in the traditional sense. There's no clean slate, no easy grace. Just a man with a Bible, a temper, and a deep need to keep speaking, even if no one's listening. Duvall directed it himself after studios passed. He financed it out of pocket, spent years getting it made. And when it finally hit screens, it landed like a whisper in a world that only hears shouting. But if you catch it, if you really watch, it sticks. Because The Apostle isn't about being saved, it's about trying to serve when you already know you're broken. Comfort and Joy, 1984, starts with a man alone in a car, windows rolled up, Christmas lights blinking, and a voice on the radio that sounds a little too calm for how lost he feels. That voice belongs to him. Alan Dickey Bird is a Glasgow radio DJ, smooth talking, familiar, but his life quietly falling apart. His girlfriend leaves, takes everything but the toothbrush. And just when it seems like the spiral might begin, he gets pulled into a turf war between rival ice cream trucks. Yes, ice cream trucks. What begins as surreal comedy becomes something deeper. Dickey's caught between feuding vendors, Mr. McCool and the ice cream mafia. But the story never leans into absurdity for the sake of it. It stays grounded. Odd, but never silly. Because Comfort and Joy isn't about ice cream. It's about a man who stops running long enough to notice his own life. Who realizes, maybe you don't need to start over. Maybe you just need to pay attention. Director Bill Forsyth, best known for Local Hero, infuses the film with gentle melancholy, soft colors, long silences, quirky warmth that sneaks up on you. This one didn't make waves. But if you've ever felt stuck, adrift in your own routine, it might hit home. Sometimes, reinvention begins with a cone. Who'll Stop the Rain, 1978, is not really about smuggling heroin. It's about the weight men carry home from war and how it never really leaves. Nick Nolte plays Ray Hicks, a Vietnam vet. Tough, quiet, always scanning the edges of the room. He agrees to help an old war buddy by moving a shipment of heroin from Vietnam to the States. Easy money, just one job. But nothing about this movie feels easy. Once the plan falls apart, Ray is left protecting his friend's wife, played by Tuesday Weld, as they run through a cracked and cynical America. Not from mobsters, but from federal agents, from burnout, from the paranoia that starts to feel earned. The atmosphere is thick. Wet roads, neon bars, motel silence. And Nolte, he grounds the whole thing. There's a sadness in his eyes that says more than the script ever could. The film was adapted from Robert Stone's novel Dog Soldiers. It flopped when it came out, maybe because people didn't want to face the cost of a war that had just ended. But Who'll Stop the Rain lingers. Because beneath the thriller is a story about men who were trained to survive hell, only to return and find that hell followed them home. And now, it won't let go. The American Friend, 1977, moves slow, disjointed, haunted by everything unsaid. Bruno Ganz plays Jonathan, a dying picture framer in Hamburg, just trying to hold on to dignity. Dennis Hopper is Tom Ripley, a cowboy-hatted American drifter who deals in art forgeries and moral gray zones. When their worlds collide, it's not loud, it's quiet, like something slipping out of place. Ripley pulls Jonathan into a web of crime, a hitman gig he never asked for. But Jonathan accepts, out of fear, out of desperation, or maybe because something inside him already broke. What unfolds is a thriller where the tension doesn't come from action, it comes from the silences. Hopper improvised much of his role, wild, erratic, unpredictable. Ganz, grounded and still, becomes the soul of the film. Wim Wenders lets the camera drift, wide shots, neon reflections, empty streets. Every frame feels like memory trying to take shape. The film never tells you what to feel. It lets you drift, just like its characters, until you realize what's happening beneath the surface. The American Friend wasn't a hit, but it stuck around. Because it knows the real danger isn't the job, it's the connection. And once you shake a man's hand, you're part of the deal. Winter Kills, 1979, doesn't ease you in. It throws you into the chaos. Jeff Bridges plays the half-brother of a slain U.S. president, clearly modeled after JFK. Years after the assassination, a dying man confesses, the shooting wasn't what it seemed. That's all it takes. One thread pulled, and the entire system starts to unravel. What follows is a darkly satirical, constantly shifting spiral into conspiracy, cover-ups, and corruption. Mobsters, generals, fixers, CEOs. Every door leads to someone else pulling strings, or thinking they are. The tone is unstable, by design. One scene plays like farce, the next like a psychological thriller, the next something else entirely. Director William Richard wanted to expose the absurdity of power structures and how they rewrite truth to suit themselves. But behind the camera, real conspiracy. The film was funded by money tied to organized crime. Production stopped halfway through. One financier was murdered, another went missing. Richard spent years trying to finish the movie and then to get it seen. It was buried, forgotten. But now it feels eerily current, because Winter Kills isn't just about one assassination. It's about how power survives scandal, how truth becomes optional, and how the people at the top never stop playing games with everyone else's reality. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. If even one of these films made you curious, that's the point. These stories deserve to be remembered, rewatched, and rediscovered. Subscribe to Vintageverse for more hidden gems, deep dives, and forgotten greatness. Let's keep the past alive, one unforgettable movie at a time. See you in the next one.